You're listening to Blue Jays Nation Radio with Cam Lewis and Tyler Yaremchuk, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Episode 98 of Blue Jays Nation Radio as the Jays are coming off a split against the St. Louis Cardinals. Yaremchuk and Coombsy with ya. And as always, we are brought to you by DoorDash. Ding dong. Promo code BJNDD gets first-time users of the app 25% off and no delivery fees. So use that as you snuggle in to watch the Jays take on the Tigers for 4 straight games this weekend. But first, Cam, how was the game last night? I know you were in the building.
It was a good vibe. They were doing the Caravana themed night with a little giveaway where they gave away a pouch fanny pack style bag. You know those. Ooh. You're a Zoomer, so you know you're a Zoomer. You're right. You were born in 1997, so you're a Zoomer. Correct. You know those. They like to wear them over the shoulders, whereas perhaps a millennial or a Generation X might wear it around the waist. But I thought it was a pretty snappy bag. It's a nice little giveaway.
The bottom line is fanny packs are making a comeback, baby.
They are. They're great.
I think, for a while it was like considered weird, not cool to wear one. And then people finally gave in to like, wait, these actually make a lot of sense and make your life a lot easier, especially when, you have keys, wallet, phone, to not have that stuff like jangling around in your pocket. Fanny pack, forget about it.
It's a game changer because you can close it with a zipper. And that's why I've always been a fan of, me. So, I'm a big fan of Adidas track pants specifically. I'm very loyal to the brand because the pockets have zippers. So if you got your phone and all your stuff in there, then it's significantly less likely than you're going to get robbed or you're going to drop something. And that's what I also like about the fanny pack is you get a zipper there. You're not going to drop anything.
And you're not going to get robbed.
Exactly. So the Zoomers have it right. I agree.
All right. Well, I don't know where we were going with this, but I'm glad you had a good time at the ball game. Let's get into 3 up, 3 down here for this series against the Cardinals. It was a split. So, kind of hard to tell. Do we start with the down? Do we start with the up? But I think we start with the up, and the best moment of this series, something I was excited for, something every Jays fan was excited for, the return of Buck Martinez. I'm assuming you watched the game since you didn't go on TV on the broadcast. And it was really neat to see all the different shots of in the stadium of everyone with their signs, and the way even on Blue Jays Central before that, they were talking about how the return of Buck is really all that mattered, not really the game against the Cardinals. And I would agree with that. And the first time they went to Buck on the broadcast, and he was choking up, like he almost didn't make it through there without shedding a tear. It was awesome to see the way everyone sort of gave Buck a little bit of respect as he came back from his cancer treatment.
It is. It's a perfect time for Buck to come back too. I think the Jays seem to be like really hitting their stride in the second half. They seem to be really pulling it together and just having Buck go through that. He's kind of just like, he's such overall like a Blue Jays legend. Like as much as we like to tease Buck for his kind of mistakes on air when he's doing commentary, sometimes he gets a name wrong or sometimes he says something kind of asinine. As much as we tease him, he's fantastic. Like no one loves the Jays more than that guy. He's played for the team. He's managed the team. He's announced the team for over a decade. Like he is really is like the face of the Blue Jays. And for him to go through what he went through and come back, just, I think provides just a good vibe around the team for the second half. It was so nice hearing him call that George Springer grand slam. It's just nice to have him back. It seems like things are back to normal again. It was weird in the first half not having him make calls, to be totally honest with you. It felt like something was missing.
Yeah. They played this video before the game, Sportsnet did, of a bunch of Jays players doing their Buck Martinez impressions. And that was one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. Like the Vladdy one just absolutely killed me. I rewound like my PVR and went back and watched it. But it was great. And then the players do their salute to Buck after was awesome as well. And then there was the TikTok of fans outside the stadium giving Buck a nice little ovation, like all of it. The whole night was awesome.
Would you put Buck on the level of excellence? I would.
Yeah, I think you would too, just for the reasons you explained, right? Like player, manager, broadcaster, just in every sense, he's a legend in the fan base, right? And even though he maybe isn't, a quote unquote legend around baseball, and he isn't that level of like a Roy Halladay or whatever, I think you put him up there just because of how much he means to the fan base.
Yeah, there's something to be said for longevity and being around the organization for that long. For an American guy to embrace a Canadian team basically forever is, I don't know. I think it's something worth celebrating personally.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So that was obviously the big up from this series against the St. Louis Cardinals. The other one came in that first game, and it certainly helps with the overall vibes of a night like that when George Springer goes out and slaps a grand slam. He finishes the game 3 for 5, 4 RBI, just add it to the long list of clutch plays that George Springer's had as a Blue Jay.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. He's only been here for like a year and a half. And the first year he was here, he missed half the year. So he's really only been here for almost one full season now. And he's already got, pretty much that. He's already got like a handful of pretty sick moments. Like last year, he had that huge home run against the Red Sox, the late inning comeback one. And then there's this one here, the grand slam. He always seems to come up when the emotions are high and when it's needed. Like, you have a game like that where, it's not technically a must-win game against a National League opponent in, late July, but, Buck Martinez just came back from cancer and everybody wants to see a W in his first game back. And lo and behold, George Springer shows up and drills a grand slam. But I will say the funniest part about this whole situation is, I don't know if you caught the St. Louis broadcast. When Springer hit that grand slam, they just went radio silent for like 55 seconds. Didn't say a word.
I saw the video on Twitter and I sat through that whole bit of silence and watched the Jays celebrate in the dugout. And yeah, you just hear like the video on Twitter had kind of the music playing over top of it, but it was so funny to see that. I love, I talked about this on one of the other pods I do, but I love a good local broadcast moment like that, whether it's a local broadcast, like losing their shit because something good happens and they like don't know how to contain themselves because they love the team so much, or the moments like the one against St. Louis, or think about like last year when Springer hit that home run against Boston and the radio call from Boston went viral. And it was like kind of the same thing where they just like, they're so defeated. It's like they are a part of the team and they live and die with it. And that St. Louis one was awesome.
Yeah, I think it's just really funny. Just imagine, just imagine being a St. Louis fan and watching that on your home broadcast and your broadcasters just disappear so that you can listen to the opposing team's fans and the opposing team just go nuclear about a home run against you. That's so funny. Like, could you imagine a big moment happening against the Jays and like Dan and Buck and Pat or whoever just disappear for a minute? Like how weird that would be. It's so funny.
It was just beyond weird. Like I would love to get a camera shot of what their booth looked like as it was happening as well, because that probably would have been great. Probably would have been some things being like thrown around and shit. Anyways, the third up we have, and I debated putting this one in there, but I don't know. It feels like Jose Berrios is finding a little bit of consistency. So far in the month of July, he's made 5 appearances. He's pitched, at least into the 5th inning in all of them and into the 6th inning in 4 of them as well. Even though his numbers aren't sparkling and he hasn't thrown like a, 8-inning gem at any point over the last few weeks, it feels like his game's getting to a point where he's consistently getting solid results, right? Like we haven't had a game like the one in Milwaukee where he gets roasted and gives up 8, or the one before that in Chicago. It feels like whatever they're working on with Jose Berrios, they've gotten his game to at least a point where it's consistent, maybe not dynamic, but consistent. And I think that's important.
Yeah, when you mentioned that Milwaukee start, that was the last really bad start he had. That was June 26th. He does 2 2/3 innings and allows 8 earned runs. That was probably his worst outing of the season. You can argue the worst one was Texas right off the hop where he got one guy out, but whatever. Point is in the 5 games since then, he's done 29 innings and has a 3.41 ERA, and even better FIP based on the underlying numbers, 3.16. So that's pretty much what you want out of this guy. I think the thing with Berrios, though, he was the opening day starter and, he signed a huge contract and it took top prospects to acquire him. He isn't necessarily like a top level ace. He's more of a number 2 on a very good team. And if you have a guy going ahead and putting up 3.41 ERA, that's more than fine. That's what you want from Berrios. He's a very, very good, like an elite number 3, a good number 2, a ho-hum ace, but those are the numbers you want. And if we can just keep getting, 5 2/3, 3 earned runs, sure, that's fine. If you get that the rest of the way, then you're happy, because the challenge with Berrios was that he wasn't going deep into a bunch of games and that was fucking their bullpen up. So as long as he's going like this deep, like he's getting into the 6th inning and getting outs, fine. That's great. And that's what they need down the stretch. That's like, getting regular Jose Berrios back is almost, and I hate saying this, it's so cheesy, but getting regular Jose Berrios back down the stretch is almost like making a trade at the deadline, like swapping early season inconsistent, mediocre Berrios for almost every game's a quality start Berrios. That's pretty huge for the team.
Yeah. And this might be a bit of a lame take, but if you have Manoah pitching the way Manoah is, Gausman finds his game a little bit, and we'll talk about Gausman in just a second, and Berrios being consistent in your 3 spot, you're going to get a solid Stripling start here or there. I understand they're probably going to get a pitcher at the deadline, and we'll talk about that as well in a second. But just having those big 3, Gausman, Berrios, Manoah, make solid starts for you down the stretch is in all likelihood going to be enough to get you that top wildcard spot or the second wildcard spot. Then once you get to the playoffs, it should be enough as well. So I know it's kind of lame to sit there and be like, they might be good enough just to get in as a wildcard team. But like at this point, with just those 3 arms and the fact that you're not catching the New York Yankees, that's probably enough to just have those 3 going. And it's important to get Berrios up to the level that he's at right now. And it would be just absolutely gravy if they can get him up to another level, which we certainly know he's capable of. You mentioned, an elite number 3. If he finds another gear here and, Gausman finds another gear and the Jays maybe get to that point of having one of the better rotations in the AL, like we were hoping they would at the beginning of the season. Let's get into the downs from this series because they did not sweep away the St. Louis Cardinals. The offense just never really got going in game 2. And, it wasn't like there were a lot of games when this team struggled where you'd look and they were like, oh man, they were 2 for 14 with runners in scoring position, or like they left 18 runners on base this game, or like crazy numbers like that. That really wasn't the case here. Like they only managed to get 3 runners in scoring position. They only left 3 guys on base in that game. The offense just really never got going. And part of that is Adam Wainwright pitched really well. He racked up 8 Ks over 7 innings. But it was just one of those nights where the bats didn't have it. And I think coming off a 7-game winning streak, you kind of excuse a game where you're going up against a legend like Adam Wainwright and your bats just aren't there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was about to say is you can scoff at the fact Adam Wainwright's, like 50 years old and be like, oh, wow, they got lit up by some old man. But, at the end of the day, Adam Wainwright's a fantastic pitcher. He's having a really good season. You look at his age and it's like, wow, it doesn't seem like he's that old. And you watch the way he pitched and it's like, Jesus, this guy's still in his prime. But you kind of look at the kind of pitcher that Adam Wainwright is, a guy that mixes pitches, doesn't throw super hard, has a lot of, keeps hitters off balance. He throws a sinker, curveball, and a cutter. It's just like, this is the exact profile of the kind of guy that the Jays struggle with. This is usually like, this is the profile of like the weird rookie that doesn't have great numbers in AAA who comes up and allows 1 earned run in 5 innings against the Jays and we all get pissed off. But instead it's Adam Wainwright, who's probably a Hall of Famer. Like that's just kind of what it is. You saw him coming up on the schedule and it is not at all shocking that they got completely shut down by him. And sometimes you just tip your cap. He pitched really well and that's the way it is.
Yeah, 100%. So just looking at the AL wildcard standings now after that loss, the Jays still sitting in that top spot. They are half a game up on Seattle, who's in the 2nd spot. They're a full game up on Tampa, who's in the 3rd spot, and they're 3.5 games clear of being out of the playoffs. Cleveland is the team that's currently right on the outside looking in. Just quickly with that offense there, my second down is just a moment that was a little bit frustrating for me in that 2nd game, and is when Vladdy made the decision to tag up and try to go from 2nd to 3rd early in that ball game. And I understand that, if he doesn't do that, like the inning probably ends anyways, but little mistakes like that. And we saw John Schneider go over and have a bit of a chat with Vladdy on the broadcast about that as well. But that's shit you can't do when the games get big, like tagging up from 2nd to 3rd, like that, especially when there's 2 outs now, that very slimly increases your chances of scoring a run in that inning. So the risk just is not worth the reward there. Like if you're going to score, you need a base hit and you can score from a hit into the outfield anyways. So just small little mistakes like that. Like, maybe if you stay at 2nd, you give the team another chance, maybe they drive you in, maybe the momentum of that game changes up a little bit. Maybe it doesn't, who knows? But still those little mistakes, if you want to be a team that goes on a deep playoff run, you can't do stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely not like a huge thing, but like a kind of frustrating thing. I think it's just kind of the reality of the John Schneider Blue Jays are going to be a lot more aggressive on the base paths. We've already seen them do so much more hitting and running. Guys are, trying to get in motion a bit more to, get the defense moving around on the opposition, try and run their way out of outs, though in that situation, they ran their way into one. I don't really mind it personally, though it is annoying to see. I kind of like the overall energy of trying to just push and trying to run and pick up like an extra 90 feet on the bases, you're going to miss out sometimes. He was pretty much in there. It's just that he fell off the bag basically and got tagged because he was originally safe and then out. Mm-hmm. And he was adamant they should challenge it too at first, because I was at the game and I was watching and I was on the third base side and I saw him kind of waving his arms around and the bench was like, no, we're not reviewing this. But I don't know. I don't mind the approach personally. I like a good hit and run team. I like stolen bases. I think it's exciting.
Fair enough. I guess you just kind of live and die by that sword. The third down we have, Kevin Gausman couldn't get out of the fifth inning, but you took a peek at, or you pulled up some stuff that kind of gives us reasons as to why his numbers aren't as good as you'd like recently.
Yeah, his batting average on balls in play through July, and we look back at his July starts thus far, there was the 2 innings start against Tampa where he got hurt, and then he's out for a while, and then he comes back against Kansas City, pitches quite well, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, and then against Boston, that game where they scored 1,000 runs, he quietly wasn't, it was a weird game because he went 5 innings and struck out 10 guys, but also allowed 7 hits, 2 of which were dingers. And then in St. Louis, it's 4 2/3, 5 earned runs on 8 hits. Gausman's in the month of July, his batting average in balls in play is 0.489. So roughly half of the balls that are hit are landing somewhere. Like he's not getting, he's not getting balls on the ground that are just easy outs or pop flies or flyouts or whatever. Just everything's finding green, which I mean is kind of potentially a reality because Gausman's a little bit of a pitch to contact guy, but it's just kind of a confounding thing to look at. You have to like half the balls in play or landing somewhere. That seems like terrible luck, even if you are a bit more of a pitch to contact guy. So I'm not going to concern myself too much about Gausman.
Do the Jays need to reevaluate how they approach their defensive shifts with Kevin Gausman potentially?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I know that back during the Charlie era, and this is something that we heard, I think after Montoyo got fired, was that Kevin Gausman was one of the guys who had a pretty significant pushback about the defensive alignment that they were using behind him. So maybe this is something they look at again. I'm not enough of like an expert on batted ball statistics to know like what specifically they're doing wrong. But for me, it's enough to look at a start like this and be like, you know what, like Gausman's not bad. He's not struggling. It's a little bit of bad luck. It's something that can probably be fixed if they dig into, I don't know, the numbers or where the guys are standing. The people that get paid significantly more money than me to understand this shit can probably figure it out.
Fair enough. So the Jays walk away from this 2-gamer with a split. Not exactly a surprising result. I know obviously the Cardinals missing some key pieces due to their vaccination status, but that's still a ball club that's pushing for the playoffs and all of that. So splitting with them it wasn't a surprising outcome. But now you get a 4-gamer against the Detroit Tigers. We'll touch on that in just a second, but this is a 4-gamer that leads us into more or less the trade deadline because it's on August 2nd and the Jays have an off day on August 1st. So we've been hearing a little bit. Ross Atkins spoke to the media yesterday, talked about what some potential needs were, but also said right now, every year at this point, the prices are always higher. And if you want to jump the market, you're going to pay a premium. I think we saw that yesterday with the Yankees paying a bit of a premium for Andrew Benintendi. What did you think of that move and the Yankees just bolstering an already bolstered lineup with Benintendi?
Yeah, I guess the goal with Benintendi is to kind of replace Joey Gallo, who's been nowhere near what the Yankees expected he was going to be when they acquired him last season. Gallo's kind of fallen off a cliff offensively. It is an interesting acquisition for the Yankees because, as we know, Benintendi doesn't have the COVID vaccine. So as of right now, he isn't able to cross the Canada-US border, but the Yankees aren't here until late September. So if he gets the Johnson & Johnson single shot vaccine, then he's eligible to cross the border 14 days after that shot. So this is late September. There's tons of time to make that happen. And then, of course, if the Jays and the Yankees meet up in the playoffs, that would be important. I imagine if the Yankees are pulling the trigger on this trade, then there's the expectation that he will get the COVID shot, I imagine. I just think it'd be kind of weird if an AL East team, knowing that they could play in Canada in the playoffs, would get a guy who couldn't play with them, just because not only would that suck for your roster, it's also a massive distraction to deal with at that time. Just like a media shitstorm, it would be really annoying. Yeah. So my guess is that's part of the plan for the Yankees, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, so John Heyman and Bob Nightingale, I believe I'm getting that right. Those two have kind of reported that the Yankees have been told or are aware that Benintendi plans to change his vaccination status. And apparently there was another report saying that he made that decision a few days ago and other teams were made aware while they were negotiating the deal. So it sounds like Benintendi, I just think it's hilarious how the guy sits there and is like, no, I'm not getting the vaccine to play for the Royals. And they're like, you could play for New York. And he's like, oh yeah, this thing is safe. Like, I mean, why? I don't know, man. It just
shows how badly he wanted to get off the Royals, right? Imagine they come to him and the Yankees are talking to him and they're like, hey man, like the only way we're going to trade for you is if you get this shot you didn't want to get. Now he's like, okay, get me off the fucking Royals. Let's do it.
Yeah, get me out of here. Let me play playoff baseball. So the Yankees get Benintendi. The Jays have been connected to a bat recently. Ian Happ. This one puzzles me a little because, again, when I look at spending prospect capital right now at the deadline, I don't really think this is a spot the Jays need to spend. Like, Happ is good. He would fit in fine. He can move around the diamond a little bit. He's batting .282. He strikes out considerably more than he walks, which, it wouldn't be a great thing here. But the fact he'd be a lefty bat, right, maybe makes sense. I would just personally, if you're going to go get Ian Happ and it's going to cost you a couple of solid prospects, I'd rather you just go get more bullpen arms. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, that's what we both said last podcast. Happ makes some sense for the Jays because, like you said, he offers all that positional versatility. He's a switch hitter. They need a lefty bat. And he's been good this year. He was on the all-star team. His OPS is at 811. But like you said, he strikes out a lot. He's not really necessarily the get-on-base contact guy that they really want. And it seems at this point that if they do get him, he's kind of just the upgrade on the Cabin Biggio position. He's like the lefty who can play multiple positions. I just don't know if looking at the Jays, that's where they need to spend their prospect capital. I really feel like it's the pitching, whether it's getting another number or like a back of the rotation starter so that you can shove either Stripling or Kikuchi into the pen, deepen your rotation, or just to add a handful of late inning bullpen arms. That's what we talked about last podcast, was getting guys who you're comfortable bringing out there in the ninth inning, or when you have a save situation at a different point in the game, say the bases are loaded in the sixth inning and you're up by one. You want to have a closer type guy who can come in and strike somebody out. I think that's more important to the Jays right now than Ian Happ, who can make their lineup slightly better, but their lineup's already very good.
Yeah. And again, just put your assets into getting starters and relievers. I just think that's what's going to make a bigger difference for this team. Jeff Passan over at ESPN.com recently wrote a piece about what he's hearing ahead of the deadline. And the part that is definitely most applicable to the Jays and their deadline plans is the futures of Luis Castillo in in Cincinnati, and Frankie Montas out in Oakland, who's back off the injured list. Passan did list the Jays as a potential suitor. He also had the Cardinals, Mariners, Yankees, Twins, and Padres as teams who could be in on those two. He says they will most certainly be moved in the next week, or almost certainly will be moved in the next week. You're probably giving up a lot to get these two. 3 prospects, I think, is the minimum. And you're probably giving up a high-end prospect that makes you really gulp and go, oh boy, because it's going to be similar to the Berrios deal last year, where you gave up Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson, who are both solid prospects. Do you like either one of those names more than the other, Cam? Do you think the Jays are going to go that high end in their search for pitching?
I think, yeah, honestly, if you're going to pull the trigger and make a big deal, do that. Get another very good starter, and especially one that is under control next year, like last year with Berrios. But the challenge is for the Jays, like, they've made some big trades recently. They made a big trade in the offseason for Matt Chapman. They didn't give up that much in terms of prospect capital. It was really only one good prospect, Gunnar Hoagland, who was their first round pick the year before. And the Berrios trade, it was 2 top prospects, Woods Richardson and Martin. Woods Richardson's doing quite well for Minnesota and maybe could have helped the Jays this year. Probably not. He's in AA, whereas Martin seems to be really struggling in AA. So whatever. But basically where the Jays are at now, they're not left with a tremendous amount of prospect capital. So it's kind of like teams are obviously going to be asking for Gabe Moreno, who was just named the number 1 prospect by Baseball America, or they're going to be asking for Ricky Tiedeman, who's gone through low A and high A, dominated them both, and is taking a short break right now and will resume at AA. So this guy's ripping up the system super fast and looks like he's maybe going to be ready to help the team pretty soon. I don't know if he's going to be up this year in September. That'd be crazy. But next year, it doesn't seem out of the question. So for the Jays, it's kind of difficult. Like, how much prospect capital do you have left to make a huge splash? Is it possible to go and acquire another pitcher like that? As great as it would be, would you give up Moreno? Would you give up Tiedeman, given what you've already given up in recent years? I don't know. Like, you need to have some guys there, right? Because, you know, we've been talking for years about a guy like Nate Pearson and how he's going to help out, but he's completely fallen off a cliff. So it's like, you don't have that much quality pitching depth in your system to come up and affect your team anytime soon. But I don't know. It just depends on how comfortable they are with this team and whether they think that, you know, having another pitcher in their starting rotation could get them through a playoff series against a team like the Yankees or a team like the Astros. If they believe they're at that level, then sure, why not pull the trigger? Like, prospects are far from a guarantee. Even a prospect like Moreno, like we've already seen at the big league level, there's no guarantee that he's going to be better than, say, Alejandro Kirk or Danny Jansen. Who knows? So I don't know. I've always been a flags fly forever type guy. I think it's worth it. They had a very good draft this year. They added a lot of talent. So
they did.
Maybe you can trade some guys. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. I can go either way on this, to be totally honest with you.
First off, with their draft, I love that they got a couple of those guys signed. It seems like they did some really tidy work restocking the prospect pool. And that's important for a team because, one, you need them. They're trade chips. And two, if they're not going to be trade chips and they're going to be on your major league roster, eventually there are going to be some big money extensions coming to a couple of Blue Jays players. You need cheap options in your lineup still. So that's what makes me hesitant to move a guy like Moreno or to even move a guy like Tiedeman. Let's say you're in Ross Atkins' chair, you're close with the Reds, you've nailed down a couple peripheral prospects, you got a couple of them done, and they say, all right, the deal's done. You need to give us one of Tiedeman or Pearson. Who do you give up?
Quite honestly, it's Pearson. The way Tiedeman's pitched so far, he looks fantastic. And the problem with Pearson is, as good as he is, you know, he's got fantastic stuff, but he can't stay healthy. And then there's also the concern about, you know, we've seen him when he is in the big leagues. The composure also isn't there because he just simply hasn't pitched that much. He's just missed so much development time. So if there is a team out there who still believes in Nate Pearson as a top prospect and they view him that way, then I don't think it's that bad of an idea just to pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a prospect that at this point that I really have no concerns moving on from, because it's really starting to get difficult to see that guy having a future in the big leagues, not just as a starter. Like, I think that's kind of sailed completely, but even as a reliever at this point, he never pitches. He's never healthy. Mm-hmm. So if a team still thinks highly of him, then, and that gets you, you know, a quality reliever or back end starter and someone that can impact your team right now, I think you pull the trigger.
The most recent update, by the way, that we've gotten from Nate Pearson comes from Scott Mitchell, who says Pearson was shut down for 3 to 4 weeks at the end of June. He's progressing and it is at least somewhat close to throwing bullpens down at the Jays complex in Florida. Zero guarantees on any timeline, but there's hope he may be available in a few weeks. Also, Arden Zwelling a couple days ago threw us an update on Julian Merriweather, who's out with an abdominal strain. He threw a bullpen at the Jays player development complex. Next step will be facing live hitters and a rehab assignment. So it sounds like maybe there's some belief Pearson could factor into the bullpen down the stretch here. But again, similar to Merriweather, I'll believe it when I see it, because it feels like we've done this song and dance with Pearson a few times now. I mean, the guy was making rehab starts and then got sent or got pushed all the way back. So I think I'd agree with you. Like, if there is a team out there who still values Pearson as an A+ top prospect and they're willing to, you know, give you that kind of value back in a trade, like, you obviously, if the price is Pearson plus a couple of other mid-range prospects to get a guy like Castillo or to get a guy like Montas, you're doing it every day of the week. You're doing that, because I agree with you in the sense that flags fly forever. And when you're the Jays and your team is loaded with, you know, again, young talent and controlled talent, and in the rotation, would it be great to have a guy like Pearson come up next year and grab a rotation spot? Yeah, sure. But if you have Manoah, Gausman, Berrios, and Castillo, you don't need him, right? Like, it's a good price to pay. Like, it makes sense. So I'm all in on a championship this year. I think the Jays front office obviously should be. And even if it's Tiedeman, man, like you have Pearson, Gausman, and Manoah, Gausman, and Berrios signed for a long time. They're going to be around for a while. That's the front end of your rotation. You've made that bet. And if the price is a prospect then you pull the trigger on it. Like, pitchers can be finicky, man. And I'll take the sure thing. I'll take the boat instead of the mystery box that could be the boat, right? Like, you hold on to Tiedeman and hope that he can one day be Castillo. Sure. But why not just go get Castillo, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I think the logic's there, especially if it's not a rental. Like, I don't love the idea of doing this for a David Price. As much of a difference as in 2015 David Price made, it would have, been really nice for the Jays if they had gotten a pitcher that year who also would have been around the following year. I think that's the kind of pitcher you're more down to throw away your top prospects for. But again, yeah, we're both on the same page. We're both, let's go for it. Like, the team's good. Let's lean in. Like, you never know what's going to happen. You never know, like, a window can randomly close so fast. Like, injuries are such a thing. Like, who knows, maybe, like you mentioned, those three top end starters the Jays have, like, an injury or two can completely derail things, and things are working right now. So lean in. I think that's the move. Even if it requires one of those top two guys. Mm-hmm. But the condition for me for trading one of Tiedeman or Moreno or both is that the guy really has to be under control next year as well.
So you could then lump in both Pablo Lopez and Tariq Skubal into this?
Of course, absolutely. Those are the kinds of guys, like, those are the kinds of pitchers you really have no problem trading a top prospect for. It was the same thing with Berrios last year. He's here for a year and a half. You have a ton of time to extend him, make it happen. And if you can't extend him, you give him a qualifying offer. And
you get a pick back and you recoup that prospect, right? Like,
yeah. And they did well with that this year. Like, look at the they had the Robbie Ray and Marcus Semien picks, and they've done a fantastic job of replenishing their prospect pool. Like, they draft a really good high school arm in the first round. They find a guy with one of the compensatory draft picks that said he wasn't going to sign unless it was with the Blue Jays, and they go over slot with him, and he wants to be here because the Blue Jays development is really quite good. So, I mean, that's the thing. You keep stockpiling draft picks, and you're going to continue to get these high quality prospects because they know that the Blue Jays have a very good player development system. That new Dunedin complex is very advantageous to them as a team.
Yeah. The Jays are hosting the Tigers this weekend. They're certainly an interesting team. I mentioned they got a controllable starting pitcher. They also got some intriguing bullpen arms in Gregory Soto. Both Michael Fulmer's in that mix as well. I wonder if there's a fit there between the Jays and Tigers, simply because they could check a lot of boxes there if you were to pull off a big deal. Like, if you're going to give up serious prospect capital, the Tigers could get you a reliever and a starter in one move.
Yeah, you can pretty much accomplish everything you want here. Like Tariq Skubal, like you mentioned, that's, he's a 25-year-old starter who's got a 3.67 ERA and good peripheral numbers. His FIP is 2.98. So that's just giving you like another guy right up there with Manoah, Gausman, Berrios. That's, you add Skubal to that, and that's a very good top four, like roughly as good as it gets. And then you add a reliever in there. Maybe Gregory Soto's kind of the guy that sticks out. Michael Fulmer, like you said. There's a lot of decent guys on Detroit. There's nobody in the way of hitting on this team that would be worth acquiring unless it's Spencer Torkelson, who they're obviously not going to trade. Yeah. But, it's pretty much all pitchers here, and the Jays could solve all of their problems in one swoop by just giving the Tigers a couple of, top prospects and getting themselves back a controllable starting pitcher and maybe two relievers. Maybe that's what you give up Moreno and Tiedeman for.
Ooh.
Might be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be when you talk about getting a 25-year-old arm back and a couple of really, really solid relievers. Yeah, of course, the Tigers, it's certainly a team to watch with the Jays ahead of the deadline, and we are going to be watching them a lot because they're in town for a 4-game set. So let's dig into that. Our look ahead is brought to you by PointsBet Canada. The Jays, tonight, the 4-game series starts. They are big-time favorites, and that is despite the fact Yusei Kikuchi is on the bump. Do you have any sort of high hopes at all going into this game for the Kikuchi return?
I don't know. There was talk that he sorted something out in his one start in Buffalo. He did 5 innings, 2 hits, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. That's a really weird line. It's kind of hard to tell whether that's positive or not, because, okay, at the end of the day, you're going up against AAA pitching or AAA hitting. So maybe if that kind of performance is the big league level, then guys are laying off more stuff. I don't know. Maybe they can catch up with his fastball, whatever. I don't know. It is what it is. If Kikuchi comes up and he has 2 terrible starts again, I think you have to just throw him in the bullpen and kind of find a role for him and do something else. But they're going to give him a chance to start before the trade deadline. I think this start is going to determine for them. I don't know if it'll be like black and white, oh, Kikuchi got lit up, we have to go and get a guy. But I think it's going to play a bit of a role this game as to whether they really are prioritizing getting a starter. If he comes and tosses a gem and he looks very different, it's like, okay, Kikuchi's made an adjustment that we told him to make and it's worked. Then maybe there isn't quite as much of a desire to go and move a top prospect for another starting pitcher. Maybe. But I don't know. Like, given the way the year's gone for Kikuchi and how inconsistent he's been and how frustrating it's been to watch, my level of faith isn't tremendously high. I do think that the Jays, if they want to go deep into the playoffs, need to get another starting pitcher.
Yeah, I agree with you. Going on the other side tonight is Tyler Alexander for the Detroit Tigers. He's having a rather mediocre season. He's got a 4.05 ERA. He usually doesn't go more than, between 2 to 3 innings here. It's kind of a bullpenish day here for the Detroit Tigers. So he's going tonight. We're going to see Drew Hutchinson in this series as well, or at least we're expected to in the third game of the series. But for the Jays, Kikuchi, Manoah, Stripling, Berrios, lining up at the end of the series with 3 of your more reliable arms as of late as well. So this is a series that's looking like it's one the Jays should be able to handle fairly easily, knock on wood.
It really is. Like, the Tigers are not a very good team. And the thing with the Tigers is they can't hit. So you're at home, you have, save for Kikuchi, you have 3 guys who are pitching well right now, going up against a team that can't hit at all. If you do anything less than 3 out of 4, that'd be quite disappointing.
I tend to agree with that. I mentioned the Jays are favorites tonight. They're massive favorites, coming in at minus 236 on the money line, minus 115 on the run line. Here's one. How about over 9.5 runs tonight? I think that could be a pretty decent spot with the Kikuchi versus Tyler Alexander start. I know you're not much of a better Coombsy, but I think over 9.5 maybe where I'm laying a few shekels tonight as the Jays kick off a 4-gamer against the Tigers.
Yeah, I'd bet your life savings that it's going to be more than 9.5 runs tonight. I'd pull the trigger.
All right, I will do that. And that's going to be a wrap on another edition of BJN Radio delivered by our friends over at DoorDash. Coombsy, you enjoy this 4-game series. And the next time we chat will be the off day, the day before the deadline. That's exciting.
Right. That's exciting. That's going to be a chaotic one. I am almost positive that we're going to record that thing. And there's going to be a trade 37 seconds after we finish recording. Right after you press that button and Zoom says, recording is finished. They're gonna pull the trigger on a move. I guarantee it.
As soon as I hit the end recording button, my phone will pop up Castillo for Tiedeman and Orlevis Martinez.
Wow. Damn, that's a big one. I was thinking it was going to be Tariq Skubal gets left behind with 2 relievers and it's Berrios and Tiedeman. And we're all like, whoa. How do we feel about that?
Spicy.
That's my prediction.
All right.
I don't think it's going to be right, but sure, why not? I'm going to lean into that being my prediction.
All right. That's going to be a wrap for this episode. Enjoy this series against the Tigers, everybody.
Best wishes.
Thanks for tuning in to Blue Jays Nation Radio, a member of the Nation Network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.